So, what do I have here with me today? Well, these would be the Brainwavz B200, an in-ear with a street price of roughly $120/euros or £100. So let's see if they're any good for the price and what you actually get for your money. And as you can see, it's actually quite a lot here with this nice little red and black carrying case or pouch with compartments to store everything, along with Velcro to keep things tidy and a nice little small cable clip. Besides that, we also get 5 different sizes or pairs of silicone tips, even though I got 6, maybe due to my review unit, I don't know. This is twice, but this should fit pretty much every ear, even though I'm gonna focus pretty much everything just on these complet tips. As you can see, since I've used them already for quite a while, they get dirty and you will have to replace them at some point, but this is the best compromise in terms of comfort and sound quality and also isolation, which is a big factor for these. But before we are going into a little bit more, I would say let's take a look at the cable, where I'm just not a big fan of, because as you can see, the cable tangles up all the time. It's 1.3 meters long and the actual quality is good, but it just never wants to stay straight and it's a little bit kind of having of an own personality. Other than that, we get the 135-degree 3.5mm jack. Looks a little bit odd, but yeah, it's okay. You can also change the length of the separation here, which is okay. And then we will end here obviously at the in-ears. You get this nice little hook around your ear along with a little bit of a small strain relief. And then we get the housing. Not quite sure what I should really tell you here. The plastic feels good and it's black, it's glossy. There is a little bit of a marker which side it is, but that's pretty much all I can say. But the complet tips definitely are the highlight here along with the hooks. So let's talk about the comfort. Once I actually put them in, you can see how subtle they are. So it's very easy to put them on. Just put the hook around your ear, press in. And this is actually way easier than I expected, because I thought the foam would kind of need to expand or so, but it's not really necessary with the complet tips. Then just put it around your ear, maybe pull a little bit, and you can see after a little bit of adjustment, they are super subtle. They don't really look out all that much. And I have to say, I really like those hooks because they kind of make it feel like it never pulls on something and it never really fell out of my ear, not at all. They stay like that, especially with the complet tips. You can see that, for example, this side is a little bit kind of loose. There is a little bit of a gap, where on this side it sits perfectly against the ear. You don't feel these hooks at all, and you pretty much don't feel the weight of the in-ears at all, which is the great thing about them. So I definitely have to give it full points for the comfort, for the subtleness, and the way you put them actually on. Because compared, for example, to the Shure I had, they had a little bit of some stiff hook that you had to adjust, which was a little bit more flexible, because as you can see, since this one isn't perfectly sit, it just shows that not every ear is right, but it definitely is flexible enough to adjust. But the big difference when it comes to the comfort here is that, for example, I had the Shure in it, like after an hour or two, if I touched my ears, they actually hurt. But I had these for several days, like multiple hours, like 6 or 7 hours in them. And never at all I noticed any kind of discomfort, and they never hurt. So my ears were intact just the way they were before using them, so that is great. And especially with the complet tips, they seal very well, they sit just right, they never fell out of my ear, which is something that I usually have a big issue with. And when it comes now to the isolation, I have to say, I think they kind of struck the perfect balance. Because on the Shure, once again, just to remember, because these are the closest ones that I could compare it with, they had 38 dB of kind of reducing volume, which in my opinion was already too much, because at my workplace where it's very loud, it was nice not to hear the machines all that much anymore, but since it just isolated so much, it felt a little bit claustrophobic and I was kind of sealed off the rest, and I had a very hard time talking to people, because if you have these in, you generally don't want to take them out all the time, and I couldn't pretty much hold any conversations with these. You got enough isolation that the loud surrounding is gone, but you can still hear the kind of upper range of the frequency and easily talk with people. They are a little bit muffled and you just don't hear them quite as clear anymore. But I never had to ask, wait, what did you say? Or anything like that. I always could hear them quite clear. So not too much isolation, but definitely way more than enough with these ear tips. If you want a little bit less, get the silicone ones, even though those just won't fit that amazingly well. Now, since we have talked about the isolation, what's about the leakage? Now, as loud as I listen, you still hear them, obviously. But most people with a normal volume, it shouldn't be an issue. But I actually want to take them out now, because I'm not quite sure if I'm shouting all the time, and talk about the sound. But before I'm going into that a little bit more, I just have to make sure of one thing. I'm not completely blown away by them out of the box without a little bit of some equalizer tweaking. So I will try to keep it as objective as possible and later on tell you what I would change to make it the way I would like it to. So it really comes down to personal preference of the sound signature. But before we are going into the sound signature, let's talk about the Soundstage. And I have to say, for an obviously closed in ear, it's not super wide, but it's nice and kind of sealed off with the definitely good isolation. It's not super wide, but it gives you a nice separation, and the imaging especially was also quite good. So let's talk about that sound signature. I think they always went a little bit too conservative, too safe maybe with, because what it is, it's very neutral. It's pretty flat with two little bumps that I will go into in just a second, and it could maybe be a little bit more natural because of the two things that they changed in compared to something maybe completely flat. But it is a very great all-rounder because it's like I would say maybe a jack of all trades but master of none. Because everything sounds really good, but nothing besides maybe a few things like orchestras and such sound impressive, because this is where the clarity of the sound, which it definitely has, because from the ones that I had so far, usually I review I had headphones or earphones at around 20-30 bucks, and this is definitely way better. The only thing that I had more expensive were the iSign 10 from Odyssey, but that's not comparable. Open with planar and like 330 bucks, we can't complain these, so let's take these out of the equation. And then the only thing that I've reviewed at around this price range would have been the Shure 215, which I definitely would prefer these a lot about them, because let's actually talk about the different qualities or each individual quality when it comes to the bass. The bass, if it would be up to me, could be a little bit more punchy and it could extend a little bit deeper. But the good thing about it is that it's not bloated like on most mainstream headphones. So it never gets like too much or that it just feels too thick or something like that. Not at all. It's a very quite dry, I would say, quite flat, but it could be a little bit more punchy bass. Now, the mids, those are really good. Great clarity, nice details, and overall well balanced, if it wouldn't be of the compromise with the lower mids, which is the one bump that I meant. Because the lower mids are boosted a little bit, and it's not that it kinda bleeds into it in a way that makes it heavy or so, but what I feel, and that's a little bit hard for me to explain, similar to what I had a grudge with the Sennheiser HG650, there is a little bit of a wail that also comes along with the highs obviously, but something made it a little bit less dynamic, I would say, and I missed a little bit of liveliness. Now then on the other end, the highs, they feel a little bit cut off, but therefore there is no sibilance at all and no listening fatigue. You can listen for hours and hours with them, but I personally, that's obviously the personal thing again, would wish for a little bit more extension here and a little bit more brilliance and sparkle, just so it feels a little bit more open and airy, in addition to the great clarity. Now once again, what they did though is also bump the higher mids a little bit to push vocals into the foreground, which is something that I usually like a lot, and I do here as well, but I would actually push this even a little bit more so, because I just like highs, I just like something very open and clear. And that's why my equalization comes in the jump, in the action. Because what I would do, and what I think would have been maybe a little bit more of an aggressive sound signature, maybe a more lively one, but maybe something that is not quite as flat that people would like it. Because this is, I would call it like remarkably unremarkable. Because it's not offensive, it's not too harsh, it's not too basic, it's very nice and neutral. Even though due to the kind of the lower mids, it feels a little bit boring in some ways. So what would I tweak? Now what I would do is I would take off a little bit of the lower mids to make the sound a little bit kind of thinner actually, because it's not a warm sound, but it's a little bit of a, hard to explain, it's not a fixed sound, but it kind of takes away of the brilliance of the really great mids. And you kind of miss a little bit of resolution and details here because of that. Now the highs I would extend, I would push a little bit more along with the mids, just for the sound to get even more so in the foreground, to show its true potential, and then it just sounded just so much clearer. So once I had that tweak going on, then the way I would have had it like that out of the box, I was super happy. Now if I would have to listen to these out of the box, I wouldn't be really all that satisfied, because for me, it lacks a little bit dynamic and liveliness, and that's just not quite the character I want, because they lack a little bit of character because they are trying to fit into everything and make everyone happy, which is just a thing that doesn't work. But with the tweaking, which isn't possible here, this is the thing. You can't just take every headphone and put so much bass away or height that it sounds good, because the adjustments that we have to do here are minor, and that's just personal preference tweaking, so nice to see. But what is also super easy, how easy it is to power, because you can use any phone, doesn't even have to be an average sounding headphone jack, and you will have enough power. What I've noticed, for example, if I use them with my audio got NFB 1128, which is a little bit brighter, that already helps already out of the box. With my MP3 player, for some reason, it sounded even more so muffled and kind of less dynamic. With the other MP3 that I had, things where it's also a little bit brighter, things were already better. So in some cases, you maybe don't even need tweaking, especially if you don't want it particularly bright. If you want it flat, if you want it quite accurate, then you are good to go. So can I recommend it? Well, that's the thing where my lack of experience comes in. Since I haven't really reviewed many at this price range, I can only tell you this much. It's way better than anything I've reviewed at 20 or 30 euros or what I will review. It's definitely better than the Shure that I had, because those were too bloated in the bass and didn't really have quite the details and the resolution in the mids and highs. So definitely way better there. But on the other end of the spectrum, with the ISN 10, those were noticeably better, but like I said, not comparable at all. But the price of roughly $120 seems absolutely reasonable to me, because you get a lot of tips, and with the Comply tips, you will definitely find one solution that fits into your ear, with the great comfort and the hooks. It feels everything that, okay, like I said, the cable, I think they could improve on that. But otherwise, I'm super happy once equalized. I just have to say this. They felt a little bit too restricted, too safe for me. But once you get that out of the equation with a little bit of tweaking, then I really enjoyed them. And then, so far at this price range, they are the best that I've reviewed. So that's it. If I forgot something, let me know in the comments and I'll answer. Okay, until next time, bye.